Um, Selamat siang, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar or discussion. And before we start with anything, I would like to say Happy International Mental Health Day to all of us, to the speakers, to the participants, to everyone who has survived so far, despite the challenges that you have underwent. Yeah. So today we have the opportunity to discuss in details about mental health among journalists and how all of us, I think most of participants here are journalists, yeah. So how we survive this high stress environment that most people refer to. Today, we already have the three speakers with us, but before we jump into the discussion, I would like to welcome our speaker from UNESCO who supports us with this discussion to give some sentences or remarks before we start this program. And then later on with ASI Indonesia chairwoman, Kak Nani, because Aji has been leading in hosting and making sure the safety of many journalists, Indonesian journalists especially. Thank you. Without further ado, I will give the floor to Mbak Hesti from UNESCO. Monggo, Mbak.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Good afternoon, everyone. Since I got information that the participants, also the speakers, are very diverse, so I will, please allow me to deliver this opening in English. Jadi mohon maaf, saya akan deliver dulu dalam bahasa Inggris, begitu nanti teman-teman yang dari Indonesia bisa mengikuti versi terjemah, maksudnya penerjemahnya begitu. Dan saat ini saya akan menyampaikan on behalf of Anna Lumtatse, Head of Unit dari Communication dan Information. Saya sudah siapkan. Yeah. So, good afternoon, colleagues, distinguished speakers and participants. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. May God bless all of us. I'm Yakti Hestimurti, Associate Project Officer of Communication and Information Unit, UNESCO Jakarta. I will deliver the opening on behalf of Head of Communication and Information Unit, UNESCO Jakarta, Ms. Anna Lumtatse. I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to ASI Indonesia as part of Press Freedom Monitoring in Southeast Asia Coalition for organizing this webinar on building resilience in high-stress environment, self-care, and mental health. Today, we gather to shed light on critical yet often overlooked issue, the mental health of journalists who working in conflict-prone areas and those who actively cover disaster and political events such as election, environmental issues, or corruption issues. These brave individuals venture into some of dangerous area and issues of the world to bring us the stories that shape our understanding of the events. However, the toll this work takes on their mental well-being in profound and multifaceted. Journalists are frequently exposed to traumatic events, including violence, death, and destruction. UNESCO recorded the deaths of at least 72 journalists worldwide throughout 2023 and at least 19 journalists in 2024. This situation also happened in Southeast Asia region, as recorded by PFM, Southeast Asia Coalition, has recorded 203 cases of violence, resulting in 329 media workers and media companies in the region being affected. The report shows that the majority of cases, about 61%, are related to physical harassment, verbal threats, and intimidation, while 20% of these cases, including digital attacks, and 19% were abuse using legal instruments. The constant threat to their own safety, coupled with the emotion burden of witnessing human suffering, can lead to severe psychological stress. Moreover, the nature of journalists' work often isolates them from their support network. The pressure to deliver timely and accurate reports can result in long hours of work and limited opportunities for rest and recuperation. This relentless pace exacerbates the risk of burnout and other mental health issues. It is imperative that we recognize and address these challenges, providing adequate mental health support, fostering a culture of openness about psychological well-being, and ensuring that journalists have access to resources and counseling are essential steps in safeguarding journalists' mental health. The safety of journalists is a responsibility of multiple actors, including the state and its duty bearers, as well as the media owners and senior editors. As we delve deeper into this discussion, let us remember that in valuable contribution of these journalists and commit to support their mental health as they continue to inform and enlighten the world. As UN agency with a unique mandate, UNESCO is committed to supporting press freedom, freedom of expression, and the safety of journalists in the region. I want to end this opening by wishing you a fruitful forum and express once again my sincerest appreciation to all of the participants and speakers. Selamat berdiskusi. Over to you, Mbak Margaret.
Thank you, Kak Hesti. Thank you. Thank you for providing numbers, but most importantly, emphasize on the emotional burden, and psychological stress. Yeah, we are going to discuss more about this later. Yeah, but first of all, but before we go there, I'll give the floor to our chairwoman, Kak Nani, to give her opening remarks for this discussion. Thank you. Ayo, Kak.
Yeah, thank you very much, Margaret, and good noon for all the participants that join with this important webinar. I'm Nani Afrida. I am the chairperson of AJI Indonesia. I would like to say thank you very much for all the speakers that already joined with this webinar, and we hope we can get many information and also experiences from you. I'm honored to give the introduction of today's regional webinar, especially it relates to issue that the journalists reluctant to share, mental health. So this is another thing that usually journalists feels that they don't want to share about this issue. And the theme for today is quite strong, building resilience in the high stress environment, self-care and mental health. It's a collaboration among several journalists, association and organization in our region area. We have from Malaysia, we have from Cambodia, Timor-Leste, Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia. So all the international journalists from the regional gather here. Mental health, when we say about mental health, it means it's intersection of the journalism, it's well-being of journalists and mental health as well. The journalists, some often called as cornerstone of the democracy. Journalists bring information so that the people remain informed, engaged, and empowered to do something. Whether we are covering politics, unrest, war zones, pandemic, we always in the front line situation, covering stories no matter what, as the journalists are frontliners. However, we don't often discuss the toll of this responsibility takes for us. As a journalist, we believe that we are not immune to the emotional and psychological burdens of the story that we cover. Whether reporting from conflict zones, writing about human suffering, we are exposed to trauma and stress regularly. The drive to meet the deadlines, the pressure to be first with the story, the content exposure of the distressing content, all these factors can have a profound impact on our mental health. Another burden, just like what happened now, is the rise of digital media and the 24 hours media cycles that force journalists to work beyond their limitation. We expect to be always on, often sacrificing our personal time and mental space. And to do this rise of online harassment, the female journalists are particularly subjected to vicious acts. This not only affect their professional life, but also their mental illness as well. This is also, we can see the paradox here. The profession as a journalist demands us to be the highest level of the resilience in terms of emotional. However, there is no room for process our personal trauma. Sadly, also, the worst of the worst is the journalist is often overlooked both by the news organization and also the journalists themselves because they feel they are still strong. So how could we can address this? Today we have several speakers here and we believe they will share more experience about how journalists overcome the trauma. We can see here Mas Bea Wiarta. Thank you, Mas Bea, for attending this webinar. Also, Mr. Jikri Kamaruzaman, and also Mr. Amanta Parera from that Center Asia Pacific. I just remember during the tsunami hit Aceh in 2004, one of the journalist colleague informed us that we should contact that that Center Asia. Why? Because we need help on this. But in that time, we are busy with ourselves, we're busy covering story, and we forget everything about what happened to us. So as a journalist, as yet, the webinar is very important, and let it begins without any delay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kak Nani. Can we please give a big applause to Kak Nani and Mbak Hesti for their remarks? All right. Let's jump in. But first of all, I do apologize for not introducing myself. I was too excited to kick off the discussion that I forgot to introduce myself to all of you participants here. I'm Margaret. I'm a member of AJI Indonesia and representative of Press Freedom Monitoring Asia Pacific, of which AJI Indonesia is also a member. I think there have been lots and lots of reports around assaults upon journalists across Southeast Asia. We got increasing numbers over and over again from different reports provided by nations. So it's clear that the number has increased from all of these reports. Yeah. So I do not want to touch on numbers at the moment because we from the Press Freedom Monitoring South Asia also has compiled and collected more recent data around this, collaborating with our reporters or our fellow journalists across the region. We will provide that source to you later. But for now, let's have a discussion, and I would like to make sure at front that this is a safe forum for any journalist, not only limited to the speakers to share whatever experience or opinions you would like to share with us today. But for the beginning, we have at least three speakers joining us who will share their perspectives, their personal experience, and also recent research data, yeah, around this topic. First of all, we have a representative of journalists, Mas Bea Wiharta, we call him, who is dearly known as Mas Bea, who had the experience covering the tsunami in Aceh before, and I believe he had underwent and survived lots of traumatic issues. So we will listen from his experience of how he survived and coped with these challenges, while at the same time had to nail high quality and reliable reports on the event, yeah, on the disaster. We also have Amanta Pereira with us today from the Dart Center Asia, who will share with us research on the burden or the psychological perspectives that all journalists in general and particularly across Asia has been facing. And I think the center has recently completed a research on the technological factor or technological sector of threats that we journalists are facing as well. So Amanta will share some of these with us later. And then we also have Mas, I think I should call him Mas, yeah, Zikri Kamaruzaman from Malaysia Kini. He's the news editor from Malaysia Kini, who will help us understand if there is any support that outlets or newsroom provides to support journalists. Yeah, it would be amazing if we could listen to other newsrooms. Yeah, but anyway, Mas Zikri will represent them during today's session. So without further ado, I will first give the floor to Mas Bea, yeah, to share with us his personal story. Thank you. Silakan Mas Bea.
Hi everybody, panelists, participant. Thank you for Nani Afrida who invite me join this webinar. Nani is my old friend. Also Mbak Hesti. Ya aku sempat lupa, tapi aku ingat dulu Mbak Hesti itu masih tirus-tirus gitu. Jadi aku ingat ini dulu, ya. Okay, I have two old friends here. So I will talk about my experience, but sorry, I will talk in Indonesia because my English not very good. Saya boleh share ya. Ya. Oke. Post trauma stress disorder. Saya mengalami post trauma stress disorder karena saya terlalu banyak meliput konflik, kekerasan dan disaster sejak ketika masih di Gatra sampai di Reuters. Ini kerusuhan 1998 di Jakarta. Sejak tahun 1997 di Gatra, ketika Indonesia memasuki zaman reformasi, aku terbiasa memotret kerusuhan. Sering melihat kekerasan, perlahan-lahan mengubah perspektifku melihat kehidupan. Ya, ini kerusuhan di Semanggi. Ini kedua kalinya saya melihat mahasiswa tewas ketika malam kerusuhan dimulai di Trisakti. Saya melihat 4 mahasiswa tewas. Saya melihatnya di kamar mayat. saya melihat seorang bapak kurus seperti bapak saya memeluk anaknya, punggungnya berlubang, dan saya tidak mampu memotretnya. Eh, saya jongkok karena saya melihat bapak itu seperti bapak saya. Malam hari kedua, bukan hari kedua, peristiwa kedua saya melihat kekerasan adalah di peristiwa Semanggi. Eh, saya melihat belasan mahasiswa tewas sejak siang jam 1, bentrokan dimulai jam 5, mulai ada korban tewas hingga jam 8 malam. Eh, dan kekerasan demi kekerasan saya liput. Eh, saya menangis pertama kali ketika saya meliput Klender Mall dibakar dan ratusan orang tertindih oleh kereta dorong belanja, troli belanja. Eh, saya tidak ingin memotret, tapi saya bilang siapa lagi yang mau masuk dan memotret. Jadi saya memaksa untuk memotret. Yang sebelah kiri itu ini kerangka orang sudah diangkat, dan ini salah satu dari yang ratusan yang tertindih rak-rak besi dan troli besi. Sebelah kanan ini adalah potongan tangan eh, yang tersisa dimasukkan di dalam tray oleh volunteer-volunteer yang luar biasa ini. Perspektif saya memandang hidup berubah, dan berubah sama sekali ketika pada puncaknya saya meliput tsunami di tahun 2004. Tsunami terjadi tanggal 26, tanggal 27 saya datang, siang hari saya datang di tempat ini, namanya Simpang Lambaru. Saya diantar oleh seorang detailer obat dari Kalbe Farma, seorang perempuan. Saya melihat dari bawah, saya melihat mayat sebanyak ini, saya nggak bisa motret, kamera saya taruh. Saya menangis, terus eh, detailer obat itu namanya Kak Nur datang, dia tanya, Mas Bea, kenapa nggak motret? Ayo difoto. Saya malu, saya udah kemana-mana, saya udah ke Filipina meliput konflik, ke Thailand, Afghanistan, 2 kali ke Pakistan. Di sini saya nggak bisa motret dan saya merasa malu, saya nggak bisa ngomong sama Kak Nur. Saya cuman bilang, saya nggak bisa motret Kak Nur. Antar saya ke tempat lain. Dan saya diantar ke tempat lain. Kenapa saya nggak bisa motret? Saya nggak bisa menemukan konektivitas antara tsunami dan korban sekian banyak. Tiba-tiba ada banyak sekali orang meninggal, yang masih banyak juga yang tersangkut di pinggir-pinggir sungai. Eh, saya seperti merasa ini orang-orang ini mengalami dunia kiamat, tapi saya masih berjalan-jalan di sini. Kemudian saya diajak Kak Nur muter-muter sampai kita kehabisan bensin. Terus saya melihat Masjid Raya. Saya mencoba memahami kenapa ini terjadi. Ketika saya bisa memahami kenapa ini terjadi, bagaimana mayat sekian banyak itu bisa sampai di tepi sungai di Simpang Lambaru, saya baru bisa motret. Uh, tapi bagaimana saya kena PTSD? Kira-kira kayak begini penjelasannya. Ini hari kedua. Saya datang ke ini halaman Korem di Banda Aceh kalau tidak salah. Korban-korban itu ditaruh di luar karena gempa masih terus terjadi. Saya juga tidur di luar. Saya lalu melihat ini dan saya berjalan mencari kira-kira eh, bagaimana saya menciptakan gambar yang punya impact buat audiens. Kenapa harus mencari gambar yang punya impact? Karena malamnya Kak Nur mau bilang sama saya, Mas Bea, kamu harus bikin gambar yang bagus supaya orang se-Indonesia datang ke Aceh membantu kita. Mas Bea kerja di Reuters, kalau bisa orang seluruh dunia datang tahu dan membantu kita. Jadi Mas Bea tak antar kemana-mana, tapi tolong pikirkan gambar saya yang bagus. Eh, saya tahu maksudnya Kak Nur, dan apa yang dibilang Kak Nur itu adalah pertanyaan yang selalu berulang di kepala saya ketika saya datang ke tempat disaster. Saya sering dimaki-maki sama korban-korban gempa bumi. Kamu datang ke sini motret, kamu pulang dapat duit, kita dapat apa? Kamu nggak usah ke sini, nggak usah moto-moto. Saya mikir, saya lalu minta maaf. Saya pulang dari kerja, saya selalu mikir, benar yang dibilang orang-orang itu. Saya hanya datang motret, saya dapat duit dari kantor. Orang-orang dapat apa? Dan itu berkali-kali ditanya. Tapi malam itu ketika Kak Nur bilang seperti itu, saya bilang, ini pekerjaan saya. Gitu. Jadi saya harus membuat visual yang impactful. Gitu. Nah, seperti apa yang ada di gambar ini, saya berpikir saya mencari seorang korban yang kira-kira bisa menghasilkan gambar impactful. Jadi saya mendrive pikiran saya tidak lagi bersusah-susah, saya menekan emosi saya mencari korban yang kira-kira bisa menghasilkan gambar impactful dan saya melihat di anak ini. Saya tunggu, saya selalu bawa coklat dalam ransel saya dan saya mau motret dia, saya nggak tega sama orang-orang, jadi saya bagi-bagi coklat dulu supaya mereka merasa senang, ada perhatian. Tapi sampai di anak ini coklat saya habis. Saya mau motret, saya nggak tega, jadi saya diam aja. Ini gambar yang saya bikin. Saya akhirnya motret, nah lalu ada seorang tentara membagi-bagikan permen itu yang dia dan anak itu tersenyum lalu dia duduk dan makan permen. Ketika anak itu tersenyum, saya bilang, oh saya motret anak itu. Anak itu sudah merasa lebih senang. Jadi ketika saya melihat anak ini, saya melihat luka di matanya, saya bilang saya harus membuat visual impactful agar orang di luar tahu begitu besar eh, akibat tsunami di Aceh. Saya ingin membuat detail visual dari gambar hari pertama seperti ini. Gitu. Yang ini aku buat sore hari setelah aku berkeliling baru aku tahu, oke Kak Nur, kita balik ke tempat tadi Simpang Lambaru, aku mau motret. Dan aku berpikir melihat sekeliling aku harus mencari visual dari atas supaya terlihat banyak. Dan aku naik ke atas ruko. Nah, memikir logis dengan pelan untuk menghasilkan visual yang impactful harus dilakukan dengan sadar. Untuk apa kita memotret? Ini malam tahun baru. 31 saya mendengar kabar tanggal 30 banyak orang datang dari luar Banda Aceh berjalan ke Aceh untuk mencari makanan. 31 Desember pagi-pagi saya menemukan ini, orang-orang jalan menuju Banda Aceh. Gitu. Saya berpikir bagaimana membuat gambar yang impactful. Jadi saya berjalan ke arah mereka datang sampai sekitar Pantai Lampu terus ke sana sampai kemudian saya melihat ini. Kalau saya memasukkan elemen mobil terbalik, saya memasukkan anak kecil, ibu menggendong anaknya, semua berjalan, saya mencari mereka yang tidak memakai sandal. Saya memasukkan ibu membawa panci, itu adalah kesadaran penuh bahwa saya harus membuat visual yang impactful. Lalu saya memasukkan di sebelah kanan eh, ini pohon, pohon tapi yang ini hilang. Jadi kamu melihat orang airnya setinggi ini, setinggi ini. Ini batas vegetasi dan hilang setinggi ini. Jadi membuat full itu harus dilakukan dengan kesadaran penuh yang harus dideliver kepada orang lain. Nah, karena visual itu harus dibuat dengan kesadaran penuh. Ketika saya meninggal itu seperti terulang-ulang di depan mata. Kalau saya sendiri, berulang-ulang di depan mata. Lalu tiap malam saya mimpi buruk, saya teriak-teriak. Kalau saya tidak ada teman, saya sebab uh, bukan buka terus keluar, nggak bisa di stop. Sepanjang saya tidak ada yang ngajak omong, air mata itu keluar terus. Nah, oke. Lalu perspektif saya terhadap hidup sangat berubah. Nggak ada lagi hidup yang nikmat. Ketika saya mengalami PTSD, keluarga saya jadi korban. Ini saya tahu kemudian. Oke, kenapa contohnya begini? Eh, Ketika saya banyak meliput konflik, disaster seperti tsunami ini, lalu dalam hidup saya, hidup adalah hal terpenting. Ketika kamu hidup sehat, ya udah, kamu tidak berhak untuk bersenang-senang. Karena banyak orang suffering. Ketika saya pulang dari Aceh, kalau anak saya ingin bermanja-manja karena dia kangen, saya nggak mau. Saya cuma melihat, kamu kok manja? Kamu, hidup kamu, rumah kamu bagus, nggak roboh, kamu makan cukup, kamu belajar sendiri, udah cukup. Kamu nggak perlu bermanja-manja, gitu. Kamu hidup sudah cukup senang, gitu. Kamu tidak melihat orang-orang di tempat disaster. Kalau kamu melihat, kamu akan merasa bahwa hidup kamu cukup menyenangkan, gitu. Itu dalam perspektifku, tapi anak tidak demikian. Ketika saya pergi keluar sebulan, 6 minggu, ketika saya datang, dia ingin berdekat-dekatan, dia ingin manja. Misalnya saya nunggu dia belajar, pensilnya mungkin sengaja dijatuhkan ke bawah meja dan dia bilang, "Bapak, pensilku hilang, jatuh." Dia ingin mengajak saya mencari berdua di bawah meja, dia bisa ngobrol sama aku supaya kita punya komunikasi, supaya dia bisa cari sendiri. Pensil jatuh di bawah meja, sendiri. Kamu nggak usah manja-manja sama bapak. Hidup kamu cukup senang. Jadi nomor buat juga buat keluargaku. Eh, Anak-anak, tapi Wah,
Sepertinya ada gangguan koneksi ya di Mas Bea. Halo Mas Bea. Sementara menunggu Mas Bea bergabung kembali, eh, saya ingin, oh udah kembali. Oke Mas Bea, monggo monggo.
saya tadi sampai mana ya? Lupa saya.
Tadi Mas terakhir cerita soal anak yang berusaha mencari atensi, tapi Mas
Oh, oke.
berupaya untuk push away terus karena merasa
Ya,
bersalah terhadap komunitas.
dan itu terjadi bertahun-tahun tanpa saya sadari. Kemudian 2018 akhir saya pensiun, terus jadi istri dan keluarga adalah korban yang paling besar, di mana saya memandang hidup begitu serius bahwa hanya orang-orang yang ada di tempat disaster dan konflik yang harus diperhatikan, bahwa hidup bermanja-manja itu nggak ada tempatnya buat saya, tapi nggak buat anak-anak saya, mereka butuh yang lain, mereka butuh kehangatan bapaknya, gitu. Eh, Gambar sebelah kanan ini adalah albumnya anakku namanya Baradita. Eh 2018 dia mendekat ke saya, dia bilang, "Pak, aku mau bikin album lagu." Terus saya bilang, "Hah, kamu bisa?" "Iya, saya punya 200 lirik lagu." Dia bilang gitu. "Ah, mana?" Gitu. Terus saya lihat, wah iya, dia bikin lirik yang isinya cerita-cerita kesengsaraan hatinya, hatinya yang sakit, yang ayo tak bantu. Dan aku membantu dia untuk mewujudkan album musik ini. Ketika mendengarkan dia nyanyi, dia bilang, "Bapak tahu nggak siapa yang tak maksud di lagu itu?" "Ya, aku tahu, itu aku dan rumah kita." "Iya." Terus dia bilang, "Bapak marah nggak?" Jadi album ini bercerita tentang kemarahan hatinya, yang di rumah itu seperti, buat dia seperti rumah terbakar. Selalu kemarahan yang hadir. Dan kemarahan itu dipicu oleh bapaknya atau bapaknya yang mengejak bertengkar ibunya, dan anak-anak itu jadi korban. Gitu. Akhirnya aku bantu dia mewujudkan album. Terus ketika aku bilang, "Ya, aku mengerti. Bapak marah nggak?" Gitu. Aku bilang, "Enggak, aku nggak marah." Eh, Demikian membekas itu, akibat sakit yang aku derita, sampai ketiga anakku mengalami hal yang sama seperti anakku yang bungsu ini. Eh, Kemudian ketika pensiun dari Reuters 2018, ketika kemudian Reuters menawarkan kontrak tambahan sebagai kontraktor 2 tahun, aku menolak karena aku merasa aku harus memperbaiki hubunganku dengan anak-anak, dengan istriku. Hanya dia, istriku, yang tetap datang, tetap ada di sampingku walaupun bapaknya monster. Wartawan seperti monster di Reuters bukan sesuatu yang aneh. Banyak sekali di antara kita yang banyak meliput konflik, ketika masuk ke dalam kehidupan biasa, dia seperti monster. Karena dia tidak memandang hidup nggak lagi nikmat gitu. Orang-orang yang menikmati kehidupan itu tidak perlu diperhatikan. Eh, dan saya sejak pensiun, saya memperbaiki hubungan saya dengan ketiga anakku, dengan istriku. Sampai sekarang saya membantu anakku mewujudkan lagunya ini. Karena dengan begitu, saya merasa saya bisa sedikit memperbaiki sakit hatinya. Itu ada berjudul If This House Could Tell. Dia bercerita, andai kan dinding kamarku ini bisa bicara, dinding kamarku itu tahu rasa sakit hatiku dimarahin. Dia tidak sebut aku, tapi aku tahu itu karena aku. Kalau semua bisa lihat gambar muka anakku yang ada bintik-bintik hitamnya, itu adalah rasa sakit hati yang tidak akan meninggalkan dia. Gitu. Aku menjadi lebih paham, lebih tahu ketika kemudian aku menuliskannya lagi, semua kisahku dan PTSD itu dalam buku yang aku beri judul Unbreakable. Ketika aku launching, anakku datang dan secara terbuka, sebetulnya aku nggak ingin secara terbuka, tapi seperti keluar aja dari mulut ketika launching aku meminta maaf pada anakku yang pertama. Karena aku tahu dia juga menderita. Gitu. Jadi kalau ada teman-teman yang mengalami itu, eh, keluarga adalah penyelamat karena dia hidup dengan kita. Kalau aku beruntung karena istriku gak minta cerai, aku beruntung. Dan istriku luar biasa, anak-anakku luar biasa. Jadi itu yang aku bagikan. Terima kasih buat Nania Frida yang mengundang saya. Dulu ketika konflik saya sering buat SMS, Nani kamu selamat kan? Kamu ada di mana? Oke, itu aja. Selamat siang. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Mas Bea. Thank you Mas Bea. So sorry ya. Kalau if you have to recall back and reopen the black box again to tell
No,
this story to
it's
us.
okay, Margaret. Ini seperti terapi buat aku. Mungkin sakit, tapi aku merasa ini seperti terapi, gitu. And thank you for invite me to this webinar.
Thank you. There are several points that Mas Bea raised, yeah, which I think resemble with our experiences here as journalists. At least they resemble and remind me of my own experience. When Mas Bea said that he got lots of questions from the impacted community in Aceh of so what we get in return. Yeah, I got that a lot too when I did my previous reportings and now going doing more investigations. Yeah, and it really hurts every time they the local communities who are impacted brings up this question. That's a valid question. It's just that every time they ask me every time they ask me these questions, I feel so powerless. Another point that sources often brought up is what change will you bring into our community with this reporting? Many other people have repeatedly interviewed us, but nothing has changed. So from my experience, it gives more burden, yeah. While changes are not only in the hands of the journalists, because it needs or requires collective efforts from many stakeholders. But I do understand why impacted communities ask us a lot, ask journalists a lot about this. So thank you, Mas Bea. Yeah. One thing though, from it's maybe you can help us understand a bit whether you got proper support directly after the field reporting, yeah, or the coverage, yeah. How did you cope with this as soon as you was out from the location, or if you got any support at all?
Ya, saya sadar terkena PTSD ketika saya setiap malam teriak-teriak. Kalau istriku seorang pekerja, dan ketika saya balik dari Aceh, setiap pagi dia harus kerja, pulang sore. Ketika saya teriak-teriak malam, paginya saya bilang, aku diajak omong dong, gitu. Karena kalau nggak ada yang ngajak omong, aku nangis nih, gitu. Dan ketika dia pergi kerja, dia harus pergi kerja, saya nangis tuh sepanjang hari. Dan apa yang saya lihat, kesengsaraan itu, dan saya sengaja cari yang impactful buat orang lain, itu seperti sesuatu yang berulang-ulang yang aku lihat di mata. Gitu. Hari ketiga saya bilang, wah saya harus ke psikiater. Dan saya bertemu dengan teman-teman Yayasan Pulih, dan kemudian saya lapor ke kantor, teman-teman Yayasan Pulih membantu, sama kantor saya dikirim ke psikiater, dan psikiater bilang, iya kamu terkena PTSD. Dan setelah dia mewawancara panjang lebar, tanya ke istriku juga, Yayasan Pulih dan psikiater yang disewa kantor sama-sama menyarankan saya untuk balik lagi ke Aceh. Itu. Mereka bilang kamu harus balik lagi ke Aceh, memotret, tapi kamu memotret sesuatu yang positif. Orang mulai membangun shelternya lagi, anak-anak mulai datang ke sekolah-sekolah kecil yang dibuat oleh relawan, orang-orang yang mulai berdagang. Kamu hanya boleh memotret hal-hal seperti itu. Kamu nggak boleh lagi memotret penguburan massal, kamu nggak boleh memotret orang-orang yang menangis. Dan mereka tanya, kamu berani nggak balik ke sana? Saya bilang saya berani, nggak punya handicap. Dan support yang paling besar adalah datang dari istri saya. Ya, kamu balik supaya kamu sembuh. Gitu. Dan saya balik, untuk 6 minggu berikutnya, saya balik lagi ke sini. Itu berkurang, tetapi kadang-kadang tanpa sadar perubahan perspektif itu balik lagi. Jadi itu mungkin ada 2 tahun saya dengan tidak sadar selalu punya perspektif yang berbeda. Ketika misalnya hari Sabtu istri saya libur, kita mengantar anak-anak untuk berenang gitu. Ketika istriku membelikan anakku makanan yang dia suka karena habis berenang, aku bilang, kenapa sih gitu? Makan biasa aja. Banyak orang lain membutuhkan, jadi kita nggak boleh makan itu. Tapi kan istriku ingin menyenangkan anaknya, jadi konflik semacam itu selalu terjadi, gitu. Kira-kira kayak gitu. Supporter terbesar adalah istri, gitu. Dan selalu dia mendorong, kalau kamu merasa tidak itu, ayo kita ke psikiater lagi, gitu.
It's really good that you have a solid supporting system, ya Mas ya.
Yes.
Yeah.
My wife is the best person in the world.
Yeah. Dan tidak terlalu terlambat, not too late to reach out to a psychologist, yeah, which is still unfortunately considered a taboo or yeah,
Yeah.
for most of us in this society.
Yeah, you're right, Margaret.
Okay, thank you, Mas. I would welcome anyone yeah, from from all of our participants who would like to share their stories with us later. Yeah, so please do share with us anything related, or whether or not you have coped with your experience or you have any successful strategies, please share with us later, yeah. So this is not limited to only the speakers, and we would love to hear more from all of you participants here, because we are all journalists and we are dealing with the same challenges, I would say. Thank you, Mas Bea. I would like to move to our next speaker, Amanda from Dot Center Asia Pacific. Yeah. Amanda will, I hope you can help us help enlighten us by sharing why is high stress work environment related to or triggered or lead to mental health among journalists, and what do you think are the best strategies in coping with this stress, especially now that we are seeing increasing technological facilitated stress faced by journalists all around the world, not only in the region. The floor is yours, Manta.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'll try to kind of talk briefly about all those areas. Each one of them can take a 5-day seminar to cover, but I'll try to kind of talk briefly on each one of them. But before I get into what I plan to speak, I would like to refer to something that I picked up from my earlier colleague who spoke, which was a very powerful presentation about his personal experience. And I feel privileged that he shared that kind of experience and emotions with this forum, because number one, it's important for journalists of that stature, of that experience, to come out and talk about them, because then we set the standard that we as journalists can feel. And he said something very important, and I'm sorry if I have gotten this wrong because I got this from the translation. He said, monster journalism or monster journalist is not rare. And I think that's very important, because that goes back to the time that we all became journalists, that we all wanted to do this job. And journalism is linked to this idea of objectivity, of unbias. And with that comes this sense that the journalist, the person who is the journalist, has to stay away from the story. And we try to keep our personal connections or the personal impact that we have because of the stories that we cover, that we report, away from it, because we think that that impacts our bias towards the story. And that's why most of the time, when you started off, you said that we are reluctant to talk about emotional vulnerability. And that stems from that. Research has shown that stems from the fact that journalism struggles to balance this sense of objective, unbiased journalism with what we feel as a person who is the journalist. So, but that's changing. That's changing, and that's changing partly due to the role that social media and digitized information space now plays in journalism and our interpersonal and our larger communication networks. So again, journalism is a very high pressure environment. And that's something that we need to be aware of when we keep doing this job, as well as when we enter this job, as newcomers, that this is a workspace which invariably will put its practitioners in a front-facing position to potentially traumatic events, from potentially traumatic situations. Now, that's something that we need to understand in general, as well as when we go out to cover certain stories. And what we need to figure out and look out for is signs how the stories that we cover, the stories that we report are impacting our personal lives or the person we are. I'll go back to my earlier speaker, where he said that he would go to these disaster zones and he would be completely overwhelmed by what he saw, which is suffering at a scale that is not normal. To see that many bodies after the tsunami in Banda Aceh, that is not normal. And what happens is that impacts you. And that impact was manifesting when he came back home and when he spoke about the fact that he didn't want to relate to his children looking for or asking for affection. Now, these are the signs that we need to look for in ourselves, where we will see or detect that our way, that who we are as normal people is changing. For example, there are like physical, emotional, and performance related signs that we can look at. Like, say that I'm a very exuberant person. I'm outgoing. I talk to people. I'm always jovial. Not that I'm trying to tell you that I am. I'm supposed to be somewhat of a morose person in newsrooms. But say I am like the person who makes everyone laugh in office, right? I'm the first to crack a joke. And then I go out to cover an event, or I am put to a beat where it involves potentially traumatic coverage. Now that coverage changes me. For example, I become less and less talkative. I become less and less jovial. I'm in a corner. I don't interact with friends. I used to share my lunch with my office mates. I don't do that. I'm just kind of like in a corner. Those kind of changes kind of are a forerunner to say that something is impacting you. And now that's something that you can detect by yourself, but also as colleagues in the newsroom, others can also detect. And there are other signs that you can detect. If you're losing sleep, if you have manifestations like physical manifestations, like, if you always feel headaches, if you always feel nauseous, all that, those are signs that there's something that is impacting you. And there's also like emotional signs. For example, if you don't, if you always feel isolated, if you always feel fear or scared, or if there is this sense of abandonment, that means like you feel as if like everybody has like abandoned me, things like that. And those are the signs that we need to look for. And also, as journalists, there is always a performance factor, right? If someone's performance really drops off, that means there is some kind of impact. So that impact can be personal, or that impact can be professional. So there are lots of resources at the Dart Center which kind of breaks down the what the signs that you need to look for. And I can share it after this event. But now, dealing with or creating a trauma-informed journalism culture, it cannot be done post-event. What I'm trying to say is it cannot be done when the event has started. The most effective interventions are preparations. So you need to prepare yourself for the type of stories that you're doing, to the type of stories that you're going to engage with, and then build those safety mechanisms that will help you to navigate this really dangerous workspace safely. Now, there are two ways that this works. One is what we call self-care, and the other one is duty of care, which is how we work as a community. Self-care is something it's a little bit selfish, which is we look after ourselves, and you have to look after yourself. You can't look after others, including your family. You can't do a proper job if you don't look after yourself. So you have to have self-care strategies, and they can be fortified by the implementation or by the introduction of peer support. That means we support ourselves as a community, as a network. And that community can be a newsroom. That community can be a network of journalists like what RG brings here. Or that community can be something like the Dart Center organization network. So it's a community. And sometimes it's just a very organic community where a group of journalists who are working in the same beat or in the same country, they just, they are members of a WhatsApp group because they share information and tips. But then there needs to be that as well. Self-care is how you take care of yourself physically, emotionally, and psychosocially. So for example, if you look at physically taking care of yourself, you need to have really good physical practices. Like you need to have proper sleep. I know it sounds very simple, and it's something that we as journalists tend to neglect. That doesn't mean that you have to go to bed at 7 o'clock in the night every day and wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. No, that doesn't mean that. It means that you take proper rest, right? And now that's needed mentally as well as physically. I mean, our bodies are basic machines. If you don't rest them, you can't get the optimum out of them. So there needs to be that. There needs to be some kind of exercise activity or physical activity that you work into your routine, right? It can be running, it can be exercises, it can be walking, it can be yoga, but something that really fits into your work routine that allows you time to physically exert your body as well as have time for yourself. And that needs to be worked into your kind of daily routine. And there are also other activities like which can be part physical, part spiritual, like intimacy. We are all human beings. We all are wired for connections with others, physical as well as mental and spiritual. We all need that. We all need, like my earlier speaker said, your family is your savior. What he was talking about is that safety net. We all need people in whose company we feel safe. We feel that we have a trust circle. We need to build that, right? You can't do a high pressure job like journalism and think, oh, I can go through this alone. That is physically impossible. And you don't need to have 100 people that you can talk to about this. You need to have a few people. They can be people who share your household. They can be your friends. They can be others. They can even be someone like a spiritual leader that you relate to or something like that. But you need people like that. You need someone who you can relate and who you can talk about your job and what it goes on. So there are all kinds of things, and these mechanisms are these little interventions are detailed in the Dart Center website, and if you go there, you can take a look at it. But at the core of this is creating that trauma-informed workspace is a workspace safety concern. It is like, now when this is a hackneyed phrase. There are 3 types of persons who run towards danger. You get the military, the police, like who look after security. They run towards danger. When there is a fire or a bomb blast, they run towards that. Then you have the emergency services. They also do that. The third type are the journalists. When everybody else is running away from danger, our job requires us to run towards danger. Now, when we talk about the two other categories that I spoke about, in their jobs, mental safety and psychosocial safety is integrated as part of the job profile. Whereas in journalism, it's not. And that's where we need to get to. We need to get to a position where mental and psychosocial safety is integrated as part of our job profile, right? As much as one example is, as much as we discuss how we cover a story, how we plan out in covering a story, before we go into that, we need to make it a best practice that when journalists return, especially when they return from a potentially traumatic coverage, that we have a debrief. We have a debrief not only about how the story was covered, what the impact was, what the audience reaction was. We also include something to ask, how do you feel? Do you feel overwhelmed? Can you go back and do this? All that. We need to create a professional kind of culture where journalists can come up and say, look, I don't think I can do this story, or I need a little bit of space, not because I lack sources or I lack the time to do this, but I feel that this is making me a little bit emotionally vulnerable. Now, these kind of attitudes are slowly emerging, and we need to support that. And finally, what I wanted to kind of end this was to talk about this. It's not really new. It's now the most important workspace for journalists. It is what we call technology facilitated or enhanced workspace. To put it simply, that workspace is what I am talking to you right now. 20 years ago, if I were to take part in a seminar like this, I would have to fly to Jakarta, and all of us have to be in one room. But right now, technology has allowed us that we get into this virtual kind of workspace and we can do so many things. It comes with a lot of advantages, but it also comes with a new set of dangers that are part and parcel of that. At the beginning, one of the first speakers said that journalists are now, they think that they have to be wired and connected 24/7. And the audience demands are so much. The audience is connected every time, and the audience engagement is so much. And there is this new spectrum of what we call technology facilitated trauma threats, which means you are exposed to potentially traumatic threats to a digital interface. And that's something that we need to really be concerned about, and we really have to put in safety mechanisms. Simply put, if you're looking at the digital kind of workspace, look at it as walking into virtually a potentially dangerous work environment. It's like walking into a minefield. It's like walking into a conflict zone. When journalists go into a conflict zone, one of the things that they wear is the flak jacket. The flak jacket is worn not because like you're sure you're going to get shot when you go through that certain checkpoint beyond which the conflict starts, but you know that bullets are going to start flying and you want to be safe. It's a safety precaution. The same way, when you open a screen for your work, you need to have that virtual digital flak jacket. We actually call that the digital flak jacket. And that works in very three different kind of tripod level foundations, which is awareness. It's awareness about the dangers of the dangers that are present in the digital workspace. It's mitigation. Mitigation is when you're faced with a danger, when you're exposed to this, how you deal with it, right? And the last one is prevention, which is you create best practices that allow you to go in and work in this space. So that is how we do this. And the final point I like to kind of end this with is to say that technology facilitated dangers can happen anywhere at any time and to anybody. It doesn't need to be somebody who's only investigating a war crime, or somebody who is investigating into corruption at national level. It can happen to anyone, anytime, at anywhere. I'll give two examples. One is during this ongoing research that we are doing, one of the journalists that we spoke to said that the worst level of trolling and abuse they got was after they reported on the itinerary of a Korean pop band. So reporting on K-pop can open you up to digitized abuse and trolling. Another told us the level of toxic and graphic material that they were exposed to was when they were investigating commercial sale of child sex material. So it's at two different spectrums. One, when you think, okay, I'm investigating child sex related trade, obviously we know that's going to be traumatic, that's going to be graphic. But then at the other end is K-pop. That can also be similarly graphic, similarly toxic, similarly impactful. Now, why that happens is what we call the lived experience and the context of consumption. So I come back to where I started. The journalist as the person matters. If the exposure to K-pop happened here, where I am, I'm in Melbourne, Australia, it wouldn't really have a big impact for me here because K-pop people know, but it's not a really big thing. But if I were working in, say, Seoul, South Korea, where it's huge, the impact is tremendous. The impact is tremendous. Every time I step out, I'll be looking over my shoulder to see, okay, is there anybody who has been like trolling me or threatening me who's following me? And I'll stop at there just to say that digitized trauma threats and technology facilitated trauma threats are one of the biggest concerns that journalism is faced with right now. And it's one of the biggest concerns that we need to address, and we need to address it as an ongoing concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Those are really interesting points, yeah, and important. And I'd like to briefly mention 2 points that you raised, which I think are really important. Yeah, first one is on self-care. I personally learned it the hard way because I often thought, I still believe until today, though, although with a wiser approach, yeah, I often thought that journalism is a very noble job, yeah, and I had to sacrifice everything to do the job well. Sacrificing everything includes sacrificing my own well-being, yeah. But in the end, throughout the years and learning it the hard way, I realized that no one could ever love anyone else until they love their own selves. Yeah. So thank you for raising that point. And I'm really interested in your point about the exposure to digital threats post reporting K-pop. Do you mind to tell us a bit more about this research that you are doing?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Sorry.
So just yeah, before I kind of answer that, I wanted to go back to what you just said, that journalism is a noble job. It is a noble job. But to do that job, to do justice to that job, we need to be in the best form of physical and mental frame. If we are not physically fit, if we are not in the best mental state, we can't do that job. So if we think of journalism as this noble trade, this noble vocation that we picked up, then we need to put ourselves in the best frame that we can to do that, right? We always look for the purpose for doing this. And most of the time, it's not money. If we wanted to earn money, we might as well go and do something else. So taking care of ourselves is not being, it is being selfish, but it is also a professional requirement. If you're going to be bothered about what you see on the screen every time, then you can't do your job. Now, going back to the K-pop thing, it's part of this my ongoing PhD research, which looks into exposure to technology-facilitated trauma for journalists in the Asia-Pacific region. And very briefly, what was related was that a K-pop personality had not that person, but like say that person's management has released their diary, the itinerary, to the press. And it was a strategic leak. It was not a press release, but it was a leak to certain journalists because they wanted to get it out. They wanted to kind of get the news out. Look, this person is doing this. This person is going to do this. Do on this day. This person is going to do this on that day. Now, it was a very simple story. It didn't have any and that was reported. The moment that was reported, there was a barrage of abuse and toxic comments directed at the journalist who put that out. And what triggered it? Well, the journalists are not so sure, but it just happened. And it came like one upon the other, and it was relentless. Now, why I said the level of the level of where this happens to you is important is because if this had happened in say Melbourne, Australia, then it won't be a big problem because there's not a huge K-pop fan base. Now, if this happened in an East Asian country where this happened, and most of the abuse was coming from young, teenage, or 20-something males. And the abuse was very graphic, very misogynistic, and sexualized. And among the journalists who were targeted were young females. Now, every time they stepped out of their homes or every time they stepped out of their officers, there were lots of young men, in public. And the worry was, is there one of these people who is like, putting this abuse or sending these threats out here? So the online jumped to offline almost seamlessly. So that is what happened there. And there were countless other examples like that. And one other is like, there was another incident that was came up during the research was the fact that another journalist appeared wearing a sari in a South Asian context. And the trolling and the abuse was directed at the fact that sari and the religion denoted by her name did not tally. So there are so many things that we cannot really determine these will trigger abuse and these will not. It depends with what we call the context of consumption, which means where that news reporting is happening at that time. And that's what I said. I mean, we can talk for hours and days on this.
Thank you. Thank you, especially for rephrasing the self-care point in an excellent way. And we are looking forward to reading your research, result.
Thank you.
I've encountered more and more younger journalists in Indonesia who come to me and say they are thinking to leave the profession, because of a lot of reasons. One that is most quoted or cited is the low salary, and also at the same time they said they have undergoing lots of pressure internally, which most of these younger journalists said that it's not worth it compared to the benefits that they receive in return by doing their job. And also, of course, another factor, externally, they are facing lots of threats, or difficulties dealing with the sources and the locations where they have to report from. And because of this, many of, at least those who have come to me, are considering to leave the industry. And I can't help thinking what will happen to the profession and the role of speaking to power for the sake of accountability. If we are losing good journalists, in this industry. But I do understand their points on the lack of support, especially from the organizations. I don't know. I don't have any personal experience in providing support organizationally, but here we have Mas Zikri from Malaysia Kini, the editor of Malaysia Kini, who may help enlighten us of what newsrooms can actually provide in helping ease the burden of reporters, especially post reporting difficult reports. I think most reports are difficult. And whether or not you yourself or your newsroom or your editorial colleagues, editorial team colleagues have faced any difficulties or challenges in providing the right and proper supports for your reporters, and how did you cope with that? If that's okay, Mas Zikri, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Margaret. First of all, thank you for everyone for inviting me and having me here. So I think when we talk about organizational support, one of the key things, I think the most clear and direct way of doing it as from the employer perspective is, of course, to subsidize mental health care. So for example, there are, in my company, if you go see a psychiatrist or psychologist, that is something that you can claim once every year, you get, up to a certain amount. That's because, of course, because we are a smaller company and we have financial restraints. But there are bigger companies. For example, I have a friend who is in a international organization where they completely cover the entire cost of mental health care for their employees. So that, I think, is one of the more clear and more direct ways that employers can give support. The second thing is, of course, to understand what it is that your employees are going through. So in most scenarios, what the editors and people running the company who make decision makers are usually people who have had experience as journalists before. So, but the problem is the generational age difference. So, for example, I think back maybe people who are in their 40s and 50s, their work culture before the explosion of the internet was completely different to what the work culture is now, right? But then again, it is always, in any industry, in any field, it's always something that changes, right? 10 years ago is never the same as now, okay? So for example, you will always hear in white people, Western media, old people complaining about young children taking the bus to school when they had to walk 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers to go to school when they were younger. And then people who took buses, they will complain about children who took cars, who get sent to school by car. Instead, I had to take the bus. Why are you so pampered that you need to take a car to school, for example? So it's the same kind of thing that happens in journalism. I've had younger journalists tell me that, my editor, or an editor told me that, that's it. I expects me to always be on standby, for example, because back when my editor was a journalist, they would never be able to, when the moment they get a call, they have to go. They will never be able to question out question this decision. They will never be able to say, I need personal time. I'm with my family. I'm resting. Whereas I think younger people now, they have higher value for personal time. Work is work. Personal life is personal life. There is that clearer distinction. I think people, maybe even my age, on late 30s, mid 30s, and older, that distinction between personal life and work life was not there. All right, you live to work, you work to live. All right, but I think it's not the same for the younger people now. So I think managers need to really understand what your employees are going through. And I think the biggest thing that I can share is about managing expectations. All right. But before I get into that, just to briefly talk about examples of us giving support besides the subsidizing mental health care. So we have had cases where my coworkers have been threatened online because of an expose. The clearest example was when we did a special report about the 50th anniversary of the May 13 riots in Malaysia, the deadliest racial riots in Malaysia. So when we did that special report, the two main writers were both women, and they were targeted. One of them was Chinese, and so people who refuse to accept that people from both races suffered, to view that this is one race versus another thing, or that we are trying or perceive that because we are reporting on this, we're trying to erase past trauma experienced by some groups versus the other group, instead of trying to viewing it as us telling the trauma of both sides. Right? Some people will feel that, my trauma is bigger than your trauma. So they attacked, or they doxed our the writers. The writer who was Chinese was targeted, especially on a lot of racial things. And so the support for us was, we made sure that we talked to them. We made sure that, are they okay? We made sure that they made a police report. We made sure that when they were speaking at public events, that there was police present. In other scenarios, for example, I think one of our writers was threatened because of something she wrote also. Same thing, we talked to her, asked her, make sure, to take precautions, make sure she doesn't come to the office, stay at the office after late into night, things like that. Yeah, so I think, but all of this plays back into managing expectations, right? So whether it's regular work or important work, that's important to manage expectations, especially when you have dealings with younger journalists, right? So, for example, I think if a journalist with mental health problems or not, okay, for example, you go to cover an assignment or press conference, the expectation is that you write within a certain number of hours, right? But of course, not everything is clear cut. Not everything is, okay, I go here, I write this, the end of story. Sometimes I go here and then I need to do more research. As long as community is, but sometimes there are journalists who, I need to do more, to look research more, and then you don't talk to your editors, and then your editors wondering, why is this person hasn't written? The press conference ended 2 hours ago. Why is there no article yet? So it's important that the journalists and editor communicate with each other so that expectations are managed, so that the stress is not implied. And I think also managing expectations about how you deal with yourself is also important. So I want to share, I was inspired to talk about this by what Mas Bea shared earlier. So what Mas Bea shared is something that's extraordinary. Not many journalists will experience what Mas Bea shared. I would never experience that. But I think, but it's important when it comes to mental health care to understand that everyone's experience can be different and everyone's experience can be valid. All right. So when you're a journalist, you may think that, okay, my experience, or I'm just, being bullied a little bit on social media by this politician doesn't like me, or is, making threatening calls. It's not as bad. No one is trying to kill me. I've never seen dead bodies lying around anywhere. So that's called imposter syndrome, right? There's a lot of things where people have mental health problems. There's this thing called imposter syndrome. And you always try to compare, what I'm feeling is not as bad as what other people are feeling, so it's not. But you have to understand that and manage your expectations that what you are feeling is valid. And if it's something that is disrupting your life, you need to seek for help. You need to talk to your employer, and you need to talk to your employers. Your managers need to know, okay, I have XYZ staff who are experienced, who have mental health problems, who are experiencing troubles. How can I make things easier for them? How can I learn to support them? If these things are communicated, then then managers should be empathetic enough to, try to not say make things life easier, but try to see how you can support your journalists and staff and colleagues to deal with, navigate their problems and how they can best, deliver what they're supposed to do and take care of themselves at the same time. One more thing I would like to share is I think we need to understand that journalism is an industry that attracts a lot of people with ADHD. I myself have ADHD, and people with ADHD have a higher tendency to get PTSD. Actually, something I just Googled while Masvia was sharing that. We also a lot of risk-taking behavior is why journalists also run to danger, just as firefighters or police people. So understanding people with ADHD are also at higher risk of having anxiety and depression. So it's important to understand this. I'm not saying all journalists have it. I'm just saying it's a higher tendency. I personally can throw a stone at my friends and like hit at least one person who has ADHD. So it's important, I think, when you understand that, okay, mental health is a big problem in the industry, I think then as managers, you can know better how to deal with problems. You can adjust your expectations and say, okay, this person has ADHD, this person has depression, this person has anxiety. Do they need time to go see a psychiatrist? You need to make time for that. You need to let them have time to go get help. You need to maybe adjust expectation. Maybe this person needs an extra 20 minutes to get a story done instead of how someone else does. Maybe this person needs extra support in terms of like guidance and communication. Things like that. So I think that's the main role that employer side. Yeah.
Thank you, Mas Zikri. It's interesting the point you raised on how journalists, particularly reporters who are still on the ground, are always try to be on guard 24 hours, and they have to always be ready to receive any orders or instruction or assignment from their editors. That happened to me a lot before. And even, I mean, here, I don't know whether it's the same case in Malaysia or somewhere else in the region, but in Indonesia, we even have a joke that journalists are more afraid of editors than of God, yeah, because we would sacrifice anything just to respond to our editor's assignment, yeah. I think a few years ago, I even saw some of my fellow journalists wore a T-shirt with that notion. Yeah, editors are more fearful than God. It's just it's just a joke, but it's sort of like reflects on how stressful reporters are in dealing with their job, let alone when they have a lack of support from their managers, employers, and the organizations. Thank you also for raising the point that there is a changing perspective, or maybe perspective is not the right word, but changing behavior shown by younger journalists than what had been shown by older ones, yeah, in addressing the job, yeah. So if I got you correctly, the younger journalists now are more into upholding, not only saying, but upholding and practicing this work-life balance. Yeah, and I do see that shown by my fellow journalists, fellow reporters. The older ones tend to, like, I'm ready 24 hours, 7 days a week. Yeah. But the younger ones are more, if they often misunderstood because of their more relaxed, and more, I would not say relaxed, but it's more, they are more wiser in responding to stress. Yeah. So it seems that that point is valid. Yeah. And also another point that you raised, which I think is really important, and I think this point was also highlighted by our other speakers, is there is no experience stronger or more important than others. So every experience and all the challenges that are faced by any journalist, any reporters are valid. Yeah. So everyone has a story, and each of these story is valid. And thank you for all of our speakers to raise that point. I would like to welcome and invite any participants if you have any questions, and not only questions. If you wanted to, you are very much welcome if you want to share your own experience. This is a safe space, I think, in the sense that no one is judged. As we've mentioned before, that any experience is valid, and this is just a sharing space. I think there is one question already. It's from I forget I forget the name of the person, but the question is, so mental health issue is relatively a new topic, and not all journalists are open or reluctant to discuss that, let alone in public. The question is for all. This question is for all speakers. Do you think that mental health could be a bargaining position for journalists when dealing with their employers, or the companies they are working for? And I would like to add to that question. And if yes, how could journalists bring up this issue to advocate for themselves and higher their position when in discussion of their well-being? Okay, Mas Zikri already raised his hands. Please, Mas.
Okay, so before I get to that, so I just want to share, we don't have a saying in Malaysia that journalists are more afraid of editors than they are of God. But I have heard editors complain that journalists, the younger journalists now, do not fear their editors now compared to how they fear their editors before. They are not scared of like telling editors no compared to before. In regard to using mental health as a bargaining chip, I'm not sure how it is in Indonesia, but in Malaysia, we have most media associations, especially the ones that started with print media. They have journalist unions, in-house unions, where that negotiate terms of contract with management. So I think this is something that unions can bring whenever it's time to negotiate terms with the company. I think unions can advocate for companies, one, to make sure to either compensate or subsidize mental health care, but also maybe even to recognize that or accommodate employees to take days off, either medical leave or just annual leave or emergency leave to deal with mental health issues, right? So that's something that actually we do try to accommodate in my company. So for example, let's say you had a death in the family, right? It's a very traumatic experience, especially with someone very close to you. Under Malaysian law, you get like 3 days of compassionate leave, right? But some people need more than 3 days to heal and to get through the pain. So it's important that companies make exceptions for this kind of cases. Like you need more time to recover and to heal to come back. And I think that's something that can be quote unquote used as a bargaining position lah. Because I think what journalists need to make editors and employees understand is that when you take care of yourself, you are better able to perform for the company.
Thank you, Mas Zikri. But probably either Mas Bea or Amanta would like to respond to that question.
Yeah, so like I put in my answer, there is an issue of a structural change within journalism industry. The industry has to come to a position where it acknowledges first that mental safety is a workspace issue. We are not there yet. It's like understanding sending a journalist to a potential conflict zone. There are certain parameters, there are certain kind of guidelines that are put in place. And similarly, you have to do that. We are not at such a place. Now, why we are not is due to a variety of reasons. One is this is a financial issue. The moment companies start acknowledging this, they open themselves up to potential insurance claims, potential financial increase of financial costs. So that's something that they always want to avoid. And the other one is, as an industry, as a community, we all acknowledge that we have been slow to acknowledge the fact that mental safety is an issue that concerns journalism. Now, if this evolution keeps going, if this development of acknowledging this, then this will become an issue. It is acknowledged now in journalism communities and space like this. But it is very difficult for someone like me to go and talk to owners and managements of a media organization and tell them, look, we need to look at this, because they only look at the bottom line. They will say, look, this is going to increase us. The way that I can talk to owners and managers, basically those who hold the purse strings, is to tell them this is a performance issue. If you do not treat, or if you do not create the space for your employees to work in the most optimal of space, your performance is going to come down. And if your performance is going to come down, that's going to hit your bottom line. That's the way right now that I can speak to owners and managers. But among journalists, yes, it is gaining traction. Among owners, right now, not as much as we would like to.
Thank you, Amanta. It seems that there is still a long way to go, yeah, in discussing this issue with institution, yeah, or the newsrooms, or the organizations. Yeah. What about Mas Bea? Probably you would be able to share with us, like whether or not throughout your experience working as a journalist, you ever put out these mental health issues as a bargaining position, or at least bring it up front to any of your employers, and how did you do that?
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. I will talk in bahasa ya. Berdasarkan pengalamanku, isu kesehatan mental jurnalis itu ya seharusnya bisa menjadi posisi tawar wartawan ketika dia masuk dalam sebuah institusi. Terutama untuk Indonesia, karena kita tahu Indonesia dikelilingi oleh banyak sekali gunung api, masih akan ada gempa, masih ada akan disaster yang lain, pesawat jatuh, kapal tenggelam, yang harus diajukan pada perusahaan adalah kalau wartawannya mempunyai mental health issue, apa yang akan dilakukan perusahaan. Bukan hanya menyediakan dana untuk menyewa psikiater, di tempatku iya, di Reuters iya, disediakan secara terbuka. Tapi yang perlu adalah ketika keluar sebuah keputusan dari psikiater bahwa wartawan ini harus istirahat atau harus melakukan sesuatu, apakah kantor menyediakan dana untuk itu? Gitu. Itu yang lebih penting. Sebaiknya itu menjadi posisi tawar dan dibuka, karena dengan begitu semua tahu resiko apa yang harus ditanggung. Bahwa meliput konflik, bencana alam, itu bukan sebuah liputan biasa. Itu sebuah extraordinary yang akan mempengaruhi kesehatan mental. Gitu. Yang harus ditanyakan apakah perusahaan punya dana. Seandainya psikiater punya jalan keluar seperti ini. Gitu. Sebaiknya itu menjadi lebih dibicarakan terbuka dalam sebuah diskusi, kalau bisa dengan BOC BOD, apa yang akan dialami oleh wartawan. Terutama kalau saya melihat juga ketika terjadi di Jakarta pemilihan gubernur di mana Basuki Cahayapurnama kalah, isu agama meningkat, itu banyak bullying terjadi pada wartawan. Kamu ngeliput agamamu apa? Itu sebuah bullying yang menakutkan kalau seandainya seorang Kristen atau Katolik harus meliput di sekian banyak penganut Islam. Itu sebuah bullying yang menakutkan. Karena aku mengalaminya, karena aku bekerja di Reuters, temanku mengalaminya, dan aku yakin teman-teman lain juga mengalaminya. Itu tidak disadari, tapi itu menakutkan. Gitu. Kira-kira kayak begitu.
Oke. Terima kasih Mas Bea. Yeah, it's obvious, yeah, that mental health. No, sorry, let me rephrase it. Work stress induced mental issue is not a joke, yeah, and it's serious and it's not really discussed widely, but it's at least from what I got from our speakers is and from my own experience, it is one strong contributing factor that impact journalists, yeah, either personally and professionally. And I think Amanta raised previously that one of the impacts on journalists is on their performance, yeah, that they are going through decreasing performance. But sadly, at least from my experience and from stories that my fellow journalists have shared with me, this underperformance issue is often used as a fuel to attack more, yeah. Attack journalists, attack the reporters more, and it eventually lead to gloomier or more gloomy situation that the journalists or the reporters have to cope with. I'd like to know and ask our speakers here to share with us. What do you think are the early signs of mental health struggles that journalists and their managers should be aware of, and how can, especially, no, how can both, journalists and reporters, journalists and managers can take proactive steps to prevent the burnout, the impacts before before they get too bad. Maybe Mas Zikri can start as a representative of newsroom managers here.
I think the first sign is always decreased work performance. I think as managers and editors, you will have a basic idea, okay, for XYZ journalists, this is how they perform. And suddenly when the performance goes blip, you have to understand. And yes, I understand that maybe perhaps the older generation, whenever someone's performance declines, the immediate reaction is to attack the journalist, right? To criticize, why are your work is so lousy now? Why is everything so bad? But I think it's more important these days to actually ask the journalist first, what's wrong, right? And oftentimes, I think if you have managed to cultivate a culture or rapport with your journalists that it's safe to share your struggles with you, I think most of the time the journalist will tell you. I've had a journalist, for example, his writing was getting worse and worse. Then I asked him, what's wrong? Then he shared with me, okay, he's going through this XYZ struggles. So then so based on that, then we talk about, okay, how can we help, right? How do we manage things? For example, this particular journalist did have ADHD and was not medicated. So I told him, maybe it's time for you to see a psychiatrist to go, and whether medication is something that's suitable for you, whether this can help you, right? The other thing besides decreasing work performance is, I think, what Mas Bea shared, how people interact with each other. It's not just how you perform, but it's also how you are as a person. I think, again, it's something that as you get to know people, you know how people are. Like what Amanta shared, some people are very happy, very jovial, but suddenly they become very depressed or very angry all the time. That's when you know, okay, something's not right. And that's when you start to talk to them. It's not in this current age where not everyone comes to the office anymore, where you get to see face to face. It's a bit harder to detect those kind of emotional changes. But I think at times, if you still have that connection and relationship with your journalist, I think sometimes it does come true. But I think the most important indicator usually is work. How is the quality of their work? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Dikri. Mas Bea, I would like to go to Mas Bea, yeah. Mas Bea, how did you identify or detect the early signs that something is wrong with me?
Ya, thank you, Margaret. Sebelumnya saya ingin menyapa Mbak Tri. Halo Mbak Tri Ambarwati, apa kabar? Teman lama nggak ketemu. Oke, aku balik lagi ke pertanyaan Margaret. Oke, the first time. Pertama, ketika saya menderita kesehatan mental, saya juga tidak sadar. Setiap malam ketika saya teriak-teriak, saya dibangunkan sama istri saya. Kamu mimpi buruk apa? Kok kamu teriak-teriak? Enggak, aku cuman rasanya kembali ke sana lagi, ke Aceh. Malam pertama, malam kedua, malam ketiga. Dan lalu istriku telepon ke atasanku, Mbak Eni Nurahini. Mbak Eni, Mas Bea tiap malam teriak-teriak, mimpi buruk. Pada saat itu saya nggak tahu bahwa mental saya terganggu. Mbak ini bilang suruh ke kantor. Karena pada saat itu saya libur eh, 10 hari. 10 hari atau 2 minggu. Ya. Terus saya ke kantor, Mbak ini tanya, eh, saya ditemani istri saya, terus Mbak ini bilang, oh kamu kesehatan mentalmu terganggu. Ketika Mbak ini bilang begitu, saya tertawa. Mbak ini apa saya orang gila? Gitu. Enggak, gitu. Oh, oke, nggak apa-apa, Bea, kamu ke psikiater aja. Ini psikiaternya kantor, gitu. Baru kemudian saya datang ke psikiater, pertama sendiri, yang kedua sama istriku, karena saya tidak mengakui kalau malam-malam itu saya teriak-teriak di bangunan istri. Itu buat saya seperti sebuah, apa ya, saya malu lah, kayak gitu. Tapi istriku cerita, karena istriku seorang yang detail, dia cerita detail sekali. Dia kalau nggak ada, kalau saya berangkat kerja, dia nangis sendiri, keluar air mata. Psikiater itu yang bilang bahwa iya, kamu terganggu mentalmu dan kamu mengalami apa yang disebut PTSD, gitu. Di situ saya baru tahu apa yang namanya PTSD, saya baru sadar bahwa ada kesehatan mental terganggu itu ada, gitu. Dan saya sebelumnya seperti tidak menyadari, atau buat saya lucu, gitu, bahwa ada penyakit itu lucu, gitu. Jadi yang menyadarkan saya, yang tahu simptomnya atau yang mengetahui bahwa saya mengalami perubahan itu istri. Kalau aku enggak, gitu. Baru di situ ketika ditanya psikiater, istriku selalu menjawab dengan pertanyaan, dengan jawaban awal, baru oh iya itu yang diceritakan istriku ya. Baru aku cerita sesungguhnya apa yang terjadi, gitu. Mungkin bisa jadi seorang wartawan ketika kesehatannya mentalnya terganggu, dia tidak sadar, gitu.
Hello, Mas Bea. It seems that Mas Bea is dealing with connection.
Berjalan beberapa saat atau kalau terganggu, gitu. Menjadi barometer itu mungkin kalau seperti saya ya, atau teman-teman yang udah menikah ya, istri atau suaminya, gitu. Karena kadang-kadang seperti saya merasa lucu, apa ada itu kesehatan mental, gangguan penyakit mental itu ada, gitu. Mungkin itu, gitu. Perubahan perspektif itu saya juga tidak sadari. Jadi seperti misalnya tadi saya cerita anakku ingin berakrab-akrab, menjatuhkan pensil atau penghapus, dia berharap aku membantu mencarinya. Aku malah marah sama dia karena kamu penghapus jatuh aja kamu minta tolong, gitu. Di sana itu banyak anak-anak kehilangan bapaknya nggak secengeng kamu, gitu. Ketika istriku datang dan bilang, Pak, itu anaknya ingin dibantu, dan saya merasa bahwa itu bukan sesuatu, bukan apa yang dibilang istriku itu bukan hal yang benar, gitu. Ah enggak, itu anaknya aja cengeng, gitu. Jadi saya berantem sama istriku. Baru setelah ke psikiater, penyembuhan, mungkin ketika 6 bulan kemudian atau mungkin lebih, baru setahun kemudian baru aku sadar bahwa oh iya, mentalku itu terganggu. Suatu saat kita pergi, anaknya merajuk, istriku bilang, Pak, itu anaknya merajuk, kangen sama kamu tapi nggak bisa ngomong. Kamu bantu. Jadi yang tahu sign, yang tahu tanda-tandanya itu istriku, gitu. Baru aku di situ mikir, oh mungkin iya benar istriku ya, gitu. Jadi yang selama ini ketika istriku mengingatkan, malah aku ajak berantem. Ketika berjalannya waktu keadaan jadi lebih buruk, baru aku mikir apa benar ya, gitu. Terus ketika aku mendekat membantu anakku itu, dia mukanya senang sekali gitu. Habis itu tanganku dipegang gitu. So, mungkin banyak orang tidak sadar bahwa kesehatan mentalnya terganggu. Orang terdekat mungkin bisa menjadi barometer gitu. Buat saya beruntung karena istriku cukup dekat dengan Mbak Eni Nuraini, editorku, atasanku. Jadi hal itu bisa diketahui. Kira-kira kayak begitu.
Makasih Mas.
Ya,
From Mas Bea's story, it seems the situation is a bit harder, yeah, for journalists who live alone, yeah, or those who are introvert, do not really open, who are not really open to talk to
ya. And
others.
I'm introvert person, Mbak
Hmm.
Marta.
Yeah, and also I could tell from my own personal experience that it's true that us journalists are not always aware of these early symptoms, yeah, or these early signs that something is not right with us post coverage or post reporting, yeah. And it's true that we really need others' help to help us either to be aware of what we are dealing with, or in my circumstance, there were times when I was denial. Yeah. So it's not only about being aware that something is not right, but to fully recognize that you're just not right and it's okay. That's the toughest part, because we are taught to, as journalists, we have to be always, strong, and put aside your emotions for the sake of the public interest, etc., etc. I'd like to give the floor to Amanda to share his opinions of what managers probably could do to try proactively identify these early signs or symptoms from their shown by their journalists who might not be aware of what they are dealing with, in order to help them cope with the stress.
Yeah, thank you. So let me start off by saying that a traumatic reaction to a potentially dangerous event, a potentially life-threatening event, is a natural human reaction. It's not something unnatural. It is the way that we are wired, right? If we face danger, we react to it in a way to save our lives. So it's nothing unnatural or nothing weak about it. And that's something that we need to keep emphasizing with journalists, that the fact that this is a natural human reaction. And sometimes these reactions will stay for a day or two and then they go away. The concern that we need to have is if they persist. Like, for example, if either you individually or someone you know shows signs of that these signals are persisting. For example, signals of sadness or signals of anger, of guilt, of being abandoned, or all that. If they persist, that means it's that whatever they're covering or the work has had an impact, right? And some of these things can then manifest into physical reactions as well. For example, lack of sleep, anger being expressed physically. You become verbally and physically angry, and isolation or the desire to be isolated being portrayed in their mannerisms and physically. Nausea. These are the symptoms that will give an indication that something is not right. But the important thing to stress here is that if they are persisting, because if they are there if somebody feels guilty about a story for a day or two and it goes away, then that's fine. That's a natural reaction, right? So that's what we need to kind of emphasize here. And I go back to what I earlier explained, this idea of the tripod of safety. So trauma-informed journalism is based on awareness, mitigation, and prevention. So awareness is what we are talking about now, being aware of the signs. So these are the signs, and we cannot be ad hoc about it. As news managers, managers need to be trained, made aware, and also be given ongoing training to detect these kind of changes and to instigate effective interventions. And the other thing is that we do talk about PTSD, we do talk about ADHD, all that. But I have to stress that these are clinical diagnoses. Unless there has been a clinical diagnosis of that state, we shouldn't refer to them. If there has been, yes. If there has not been, I don't think we should make sweeping statements, because then it kind of trivializes what we are talking about. Because the scope of my work and the scope of what we are talking about is about prevention. It's not about clinical intervention. So it's about prevention. So so that's where I am. That's where my work is concentrating. My work concentrates on safe and best journalism practice. And the other thing is that, yes, we all get affected by trauma, but there is a newer concept called post-trauma growth. It's like if you get involved in physical exercise, your body becomes stronger. So trauma impact and exposure to trauma does not necessarily mean that you come out of it weak. You actually can come out of it stronger. You actually can come out of it in what we call post-trauma growth. So instead of this concept of resilience, right, which is a little bit overhyped, what we now talk about is post-trauma growth. That, like, all these experiences that we have individually and as communities and as diverse communities, we bring them together and we create a much stronger, a safer journalism workspace.
Thank you, Amanta. I would like to invite our participants to raise any questions or share your own experience. Please just post it, and we'll give you the floor. Do we already have any? While waiting for our participants to post questions or share experience, I would like to go back to the story that Mas Bea shared with us. Yeah, from his story, one thing that I picked up, probably because it resembles with my own experiences with this self-punishment. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Mas Bea. Yeah, but it seems to me that back then you underwent the time when you sort of like punish yourself, that because you met many children and people who were suffering, so you did not deserve to have an easy life. Yeah, and it affected others around you. It sort of like happened to me as well, because I had this one experience investigating how deforestation, yeah, massive deforestation affected an indigenous community in Papua, in a remote area in Papua. And I stayed there with them, with the community, for almost a month. And every day I saw how struggling they were to get foods to eat on daily basis. And I listened to stories when families lost their children, to malnutrition because of the difficulty in getting food, as their food sources were, affected by the plantation that has been developed in their indigenous forest. Yeah, it was kind of late for me to understand what I had went through. Yeah, but I remember that after getting out there, I could not eat at all. Yeah, for almost a month, because every time I touched food, I felt guilty. So I refused to eat. I think almost 3 weeks. Yeah, every day 3 weeks. I I could not eat. I barely ate anything. I tried several times, but every time I touch my foods, I felt like, no, I shouldn't eat anything, because I know these children are struggling to survive. And in the end, I got malnourished for a while. And I developed sort of like a serious illness that I'm still recovering until now. But yeah, I would like to invite our fellow journalists to please understand yourself as early as possible. For me, it's kind of late. And it's a good point that Mas Bea and other speakers raised, that talk to anyone that you trust. Yeah, because I'm sort of like introvert, so I don't talk about my jobs or my works to anyone, including my families, until it's too late. Yeah. So, and also because I live alone. So it's a difficult situation. But yeah, it's a good reminder listening to Mas Bea, Amanta, and Sikri, that it's important to first identify, understand, or be aware of these early signs. Yeah, and then just talk to anyone that you trust. Yeah. Is there any participants that would be willing to share their own experience as well with us, so that we can support each other or enrich the knowledge around this topic? While waiting for questions and responses, our discussion today reminds me of freelancers. Yeah, I don't know how difficult it is for freelancers, or maybe it's more difficult or more challenging for them dealing with this traumatic experience post-reporting, yeah, and mental health issues, given that they don't have one established institution or organization that support them, yeah, because freelancers, I might not be the right person to speak on their behalf, but as far as I understand, freelancers will work on projects, yeah, based on assignments from the respective newsrooms that hire them. I'm wondering whether either Mas Zikri or Amanta have any ideas or suggestions how particularly freelancers can address these mental health issues, knowing that they don't have a set in stone or set newsroom or team that support them other than their own families, probably. Mas Zikri mungkin, Mas Riki, I don't know whether you work with freelancers as well.
Personally, I don't have any experience with this, but I think just from the top of my head, one suggestion I have would be that, as I think Amanta pointed out earlier, right? Companies should, it depends on what you're hiring the freelancer for. So for example, if you're hiring a freelancer to cover a story that does have traumatic risk, right? For example, to cover a disaster or to cover anything that could potentially carry that risk of has a higher risk of being traumatic to a journalist. I think then the people who hire such freelancers should make some sort of accommodations for them in terms of either to get mental health support if they require so after the assignment is completed. Because well, it is I hire you for one thing only and only one thing. It is still something I think on the lines of human compassion. I think you at the very least you should at least, even if you cannot give monetary compensation to a freelancer to go get mental health support, perhaps at least you should at least have a debriefing after, right, to assess their mental health state and whether or not they need help. And I recommend for them, okay, I think you need to go see someone about it. I think that's might be one solution to deal with this.
Thank you, Mas Zikri. I'd like to go to Amanta, whether you have additional points on how freelancers especially can address this topic, or whether you, to the best of your knowledge, whether freelancers have experienced different circumstances or even worse than full-time reporters.
Well, the main difference is that full-timers have that safety or the appearance of a community because they are engaged with and they are linked to a community by the very nature of their job, and freelancers don't have that. But in terms of creating a trauma-informed work practice, the self-care guidelines for freelancers, it's the same. It's like you need to look after yourself, you need to look for certain signs of change, trauma impact, or how it's impact. And again, whether these changes are persisting. Now, there is another layer, which is we have to think about what is practical. We can't kind of go around like saying companies should do this, companies should do that. And if they're not doing that, then sometimes it's pointless just going in like, talking to them. What I see is like organizations like what organizations like RG can do, because they can replace what these companies can do. They can create that community by proactively bringing freelancers in and providing them with that support network, providing them with that opportunities to openly talk about their vulnerabilities, openly have access to the level of resources that those who are full-timers will have. One example is that the organization that I work for, it's duty bound to provide me with access to counseling if I so require. It's a requirement. It's a legal requirement. If they don't do that, then I can go to courts, right? Now, if I'm a freelancer, the moment I become a consultant or moment I become somebody who's on a contract, that goes away. Now, organizations like RG can provide that. They can come in and they can say, look, we provide these kind of services, and proactively gather freelancers and give them that. And I think that's what we need to do. And in terms of like impact, how impactful an event is depends on the lived experience. You can be a freelancer, but if you have a really safe home and private environment where you feel safe, and then you can actually kind of cushion the impact. You can be working. I'll actually tell this story. This again came through my research, where I spoke to a journalist who works for a really important media organization in an East Asian country, right? Really competitive, really recognized, high profile. But she does not talk about her work impact in her office, right? Why? Because the office is so competitive. Everyone in that office wants to get the best story, wants to beat the other. It's so competitive. And because of that competitive nature, she doesn't feel safe. And on the other level, management has key performance indicators which are linked to stories. Stories don't perform, you don't produce stories, you get fired. So because of that, there is that office environment where on appearance, it gives all the optics of a safe, real safe work environment with all the safety foundation. But in practice, it's not. So the impact depends on what we call the context of consumption. But for freelancers, I see a big role for journalism rights bodies to come in and fill that vacuum of providing them with the kind of services that they deserve. And again, I mean, if we talk so much about them and if we talk so much about the value they bring to journalism and the right to information and the freedom of expression, then we might as well walk that talk and provide them with those kind of facilities.
Amanta's points reminds me of the importance of being part of a community, yeah, whatever that community is. So it seems to me that organizations like ASI Indonesia, no, let me rephrase this. It's a call for an organization like ASI Indonesia to be proactively reach out to journalists, yeah, but also at the same time a call and encouragement for journalists to proactively contact organizations like ASI Indonesia and organizations like across the region, yeah. So we can support each other. I'm not sure whether Mas Bea has the experience of working as a freelancer, but probably you have something to add to this point, probably from stories that you heard during reporting from the field, because I know for a fact that many freelancers work for international organizations or newsrooms in Indonesia in particular.
Iya, thank you Mbak Margaret. Eh, saya setuju dengan apa yang dibilang Amanta. Mungkin Aji bisa memulainya dengan woro-woro ke anggotanya bahwa kita menyediakan psikiater buat siapa aja yang merasa kesehatan mentalnya terganggu. Eh, eh, ketika PFI, Pewarta Foto Indonesia dibentuk, itu dipicu oleh banyaknya wartawan foto yang dipukuli aparat keamanan, motornya dibakar. Kemudian kita mendirikan PFI walaupun diancam oleh PWI. PWI datang ke kami pada saat itu, dia bilang, kamu jangan mencoba membuat organisasi tandingan wartawan di Indonesia, gitu. Jadi kita tidak meresmikan PFI, tapi sejalan dengan banyaknya wartawan foto yang dipukuli, kemudian kita bertekad kita harus bikin organisasi. Dan PFI terbentuk, salah satu tujuannya adalah kita meng-hire lawyer yang akan kita ajak maju bersama-sama ketika ada wartawan foto dipukuli, atau motornya dibakar, atau kameranya dirampas, dan it works. Jadi setiap kali itu kejadian, kita datang, kita tahu misalnya, oh itu polisi yang melakukan, kita datang ke Polda. Oh itu TNI yang melakukan, kita datang ke Mabes Abli. Ketua PFI didampingi lawyer, satu orang, berdua, dan kita ngomong baik-baik. Dan itu terjadi, dan itu berjalan baik. Kemudian kita bilang kepada semua anggota, kalau ada apa-apa ketika kalian liputan, kalian lapor ke PFI. Tapi kalian harus punya kartu tanda anggota PFI. Dan semua wartawan foto bikin kartu tanda pengenal PFI. ketika itu terjadi, semuanya jadi beres. Bahkan mobil wartawan yang dirusak oleh polisi yang marah-marah, hancur, diganti sama mereka. Kamera diganti. Dan sejak saat itu, ketika kita beberapa kali melakukan hal itu, aparat keamanan menjadi, ketika kita bilang kita wartawan foto, mereka seperti punya rem. Jadi kemudian pengurus PFI intensif memberitahu, kita menyediakan lawyer untuk kalian ketika liputan. Mungkin Aji bisa memulainya dengan kita menyediakan psikiater. Aku mungkin juga akan mengusulkan kepada PFI untuk hal yang sama, bahwa coba kalian bekerja sama dengan sebuah lembaga psikiatri untuk memfasilitasi hal ini. Aku rasa ide itu bagus, gitu. Karena PFI menaungi juga anggota-anggota freelance, dan aku punya teman freelance Sumatera Utara yang karena banyak meliput disaster, dia menjadi mentalnya sakit dan diatasi sendiri dengan banyak menelan obat penenang, ganja, dan itu common di Reuters juga common, tapi itu berbahaya, gitu. Artinya zat psikotropika itu di Indonesia kan sesuatu yang ilegal, tapi temanku freelance di Sumatera Utara mengatasi itu dengan ganja, gitu. Dan di Reuters juga dan itu berbahaya juga, tapi ketika itu jadi satu-satunya jalan keluar, ya apalagi yang mau dilakukan, gitu. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Mas Bea ya. Mas Bea has expressed real call to action, addressed to Aji Indonesia in particular, yeah, to start thinking about providing services on the counseling, perhaps, yeah, or yeah, psychological support. So Aji will note this. I think this call to action also applies to similar organizations, yeah, across the region, to help support other our fellow journalists beyond Indonesia. And Mas Bea also reiterated, yeah, the message of the importance of being part of community, and I do agree with this, because I myself has experienced or enjoyed the benefits of being a community like Aji Indonesia, especially in dealing with unbelievable circumstances, either around health issues or safety issues. Yeah. We have one question from Haria Lubis. She was asking, journalism is indeed a risky and demanding job, with the media or newsroom constantly ask for a large amount of information quickly and within tight deadlines to publish. How can these demands be met in balance with the efforts to maintain the health of the journalists mentally and physically? Haria Lubis did not address this question to any specific speakers, but I think I would like to give the floor first to Zikri as newsroom managers, and later on to Amanda. Yeah. How do you experience balancing this, Mas Zikri, as newsroom managers?
I think I can't speak for every organization, but I think where I work in Malaysia Kini, one thing that we try to do is to realize we don't have, what can we do with the amount of people that we have, right? I think at some point maybe I think we do what a lot of organizations do, which is that you try to do as much as possible. You compete with everyone. You want to do everything under the sun. But I think we quickly realized that it's not sustainable. And we were having reporters burn out regularly, editors will burn out, everyone's getting burned out. So I think it requires a shift in mentality in your organization to understand that, okay, you only have, let's say, 5 workers, right? You cannot expect 5 journalists to do the work of 10 journalists, right? And then so then you have to think about, okay, I have 5. How do I with these 5 people, how do I make a compelling product that's still competitive? I think that's doable. There are many ways to do it. There are examples of newsrooms where there are only two or three people and they do very incredible work. They do more. They don't focus on. They do more in-depth work. For example, things that take fewer people but longer time, so that what they publish is more impactful and that brings the eyeballs and attention. Now, that is not exactly feasible in every newsroom. For example, a newsroom where you're a national news, where there's expectation from your readers that I want to know everything from this one source from your organization. So then you have to come up with strategies on how to best deal with this. But regardless of that, I think the simplest thing that you can do is to make sure that your journalists have adequate rest time, right? Even if you expect them to be on standby 24 hours, 7 days a week, you have to be realistic. Like, okay, this person has worked for 6 days already this week, for example. This person needs to rest. Okay, if they could, that we have problems with journalists, I think, especially older journalists, where they don't want to rest. I think, especially during very exciting periods, during an election, for example, or when things are very, very heated and there's a lot of adrenaline going, people don't want to take breaks. People want to keep going. But you kind of have to tell them, okay, you can work, but you need to rest. Maybe, let's say, the first 8 hours of the day. You need to make sure. I think newsroom managers, I think that's the simplest, absolute bare minimum is to make sure that your journalists have enough rest. Even in a situation where you do require them to be on standby, you need to make sure that these people are not working themselves to death. You need to make sure that they take breaks and just rest, because when and work, if you work an employee to the point where they cannot work anymore, then the amount of time that you lose that resource is going to be much longer than compared to if you give someone time to rest and recuperate. They will bounce back faster. I think that's something that managers have to think about.
Thank you, Mas Zikri. Your point tells me that newsroom managers also need to remember they are journalists, they are part of this community, and they also need to take care of themselves, be aware of these signs of mental health issues, yeah. Because if they are not healthy mentally, there is a probability of them reproduce the burnout, yeah, or the difficulty that they are facing to their reporters, yeah, on the ground. And I have a fellow journalist, yeah, who who complained about their editors who used to be on the ground reporters, now being this is their own words, as wicked as their as wicked as their other editors, while previously they also grumbled, complain about how bad their editors treated them. But now that they are in being now they are part of the newsroom managers, they are doing the same to the other reporters who are still on the ground. So I don't know, but I think there's something that we need to collectively address here, yeah, working in this industry. But thank you, Mas Zikri, to raise the point of it's also important for newsroom managers to take care of themselves because they are managing others and leading the organization as well, yeah, or the production side of stories or reports, yeah.
Just to comment on that, as someone who was a journalist and promoted to an editor, I also went through that phase. I complained about the editors, and then I became the editor, and then I became the people thing that people complain about. Part of the reason is because when you get promoted and you put in a different position, you learn that, actually, as editors, there are certain things that you have to do. But I think it's important for people who are in positions like editors to try and remember that, okay, yes, you have new targets to meet. There are different challenges, but you also need to remember how it was like when you were as a journalist. I think you always need, if you remember the kind of problems and challenges that you had as a journalist with editors, I think you will have a different mindset. Approach the problems with a different mindset instead of just crack the whip all the time.
Mhm. That's an interesting term, yeah, crack the whip all the time. Thank you, Mas Zikri. I'd like to pass the floor to Amanta. Probably from your experience or to the best of your knowledge, maybe from your discussions with newsroom managers or anyone working in this industry, how what is there any strategies, and if there is this kind of strategies, how could we balance these demands to hit deadlines, but at the same time also making sure that the messengers or the tools or the instruments in providing those deadlines are healthy and okay?
Yeah, thank you. Before I answer that, I would like to go back to what Masvia said about RG taking up the baton and creating that resource pool for freelancers. I think it's an absolute must. But I also want to stress one thing, which is like providing counseling, providing psychologists and all that. That's a step when the damage is done. And there is another process before that, that is where you create prevention, awareness and prevention. And while you're creating those resources with access to counselors and other, those kind of very specialized resources, like I said, PTSD is a clinical diagnosis. If you're diagnosed with that, I am absolutely of no help. I will not even try to do that. But where I can come in is like creating those preventive measures. And the comparison that I can take is looking at the digital flak jacket in a real way. You wear the flak jacket to be safe. If you don't wear the flak jacket and if you get shot, the person who is advocating for the flak jacket can't help you. You will need medical help because the damage is done. So when you're looking at this, look at that tripod of safety: awareness, mitigation, and prevention. Now, answering this question, the easiest answer is to effectively instigate and deploy trauma-informed best journalism practices. And that is at a, excuse me, at a self-care level and as a peer support level. The manager's role comes at a peer support level, where they look at their journalist and look at them as like, how is the performance going? What is the performance? Is it going up, down? Is it quantitatively good, qualitatively good, all that? Same thing with the individual. And you need to create workroom practices that help you individually and as a work community. Now, in my case, I work most of the time as a freelance consultant, and my work demands depend on the work that I undertake. It's almost 8 o'clock here where I am. Now, I do that, but then I will take rest. I will create certain levels of interventions where I take breaks from journalism. Now, before I do that, I need to understand what my work demands, right? I can't say I only work during the week and then don't work during the weekends if my work has better demand over the weekend. But then I have to instigate the breaks that I take depending on the work routine. So I take long breaks, intermittent breaks, long short breaks, all that. That has to be worked through that. And also look at like how can you perform best? What are the demands? Just because your demand, the demand is for you to be connected 24/7, is that really helping your performance? Can you look at all the emails early in the morning and figure out this is what I need to do, and then not look at them at the end of the day? So these interventions have to be individually thought out and deployed. But the simplest answer is deploy trauma-informed journalism practices, where you look at the psychosocial safety of journalists, but parallelly with their physical safety as well.
Thank you, Amanta. Mas Bea, we listened to your story before, but do you have anything to share about how you manage deadlines, expectation from your newsroom while dealing with this stress, especially when you were still on the ground?
Oke, Margaret, thank you. Buat teman-teman ketika masuk menjadi wartawan di sebuah media, satu hal yang harus diperhatikan bahwa harus ada perjanjian berapa jam kita harus bekerja sehari dan berapa hari dalam seminggu. Karena itu yang disodorkan kepadaku ketika aku masuk Reuters. It's clear disebut bekerja jam 8 sampai jam 6 sore dan 5 hari seminggu. So saya punya 2 hari dalam seminggu untuk istirahat. Itu yang pertama, dan baiknya di Reuters adalah ketika saya harus jaga Sabtu Minggu, saya mendapat ganti libur Senin Selasa. Itu selalu, dan itu selalu diingatkan oleh editor saya atau manajer saya, Mbak Eni. Saya bersyukur saya masuk dalam sebuah tim yang walaupun secara hierarki kita atasan bawahan, ada editor dari Prancis, ada editor dari Australia, tapi kita membagi pekerjaan dengan efektif. Artinya, oke, Sabtu Minggu ini yang jaga Bea. It's mean semua libur, editor juga libur. Nah, tapi semua editor dan semua wartawan yang libur wajib memberikan update berita kepada saya yang akan menindaklanjuti. Dan itu terjadi pada semua orang. Tanggung jawab wartawan yang libur hanya kalau dia mendengar sesuatu, dia wajib melaporkan kepada yang jaga. Dan ketika seseorang libur, dia akan selalu libur. Tidak akan disenggol oleh kantor, itu beruntungnya saya, tidak akan disenggol oleh kantor sampai pada keadaan yang mendesak. Atau hanya dibilang bahwa, oke Bea, hari ini saya tahu kamu libur, tapi ini ada peristiwa ini, jadi besok kamu pagi-pagi sekali harus langsung pergi ke sini. Hanya itu, dan itu diupdate, dan saya pergi. Sehingga betul seperti apa kata Pereira, kita punya tenaga baru, kita punya mental yang sudah istirahat karena kita libur 2 hari dalam seminggu. Dan itu nggak saya dapatkan ketika saya bekerja di media di Indonesia. Saya pikir itu yang harus diajukan oleh teman-teman kepada manajemen kantor bahwa kalian berhak libur 2 hari dalam seminggu, berhak gitu. Sehingga kalian punya waktu istirahat dan sekaligus mengingatkan bahwa kita punya dunia lain di luar dunia pekerjaan. Aku tahu bahwa kerjaan wartawan itu kompetitif. Iya, betul. Tapi mental dan fisik yang harus prima itu nggak bisa lain kecuali kita harus istirahat. Mungkin itu harus diajukan ketika misalnya kalian pindah kerja ke media lain, gitu. Dan surprisingly, ketika saya bekerja di Gatra saya tidak mendapat itu. Ketika saya bekerja di Reuters saya mendapat 2 hari libur. Itu seperti sebuah kemewahan dan itu terasa ketika saya habis libur. Hari besoknya saya fresh sekali untuk menelan apapun yang terjadi, gitu. Eh, itu bisa terjadi kalau dalam tim redaksi itu kita semua punya pandangan yang sama bahwa oke, ketika hari libur semua harus libur kecuali yang standby, kecuali yang bertugas Sabtu Minggu. Yang bertugas Sabtu Minggu harus dapat libur Senin Selasa, gitu. Ketika kebiasaan itu disosialisasikan dan semua setuju dan semua tahu bahwa kita harus saling support untuk mendapat hari libur, saya kira itu bisa dilakukan, gitu.
Terima kasih Mas Bea ya. I think Mas Bea has reiterated the same message that Amanta raised, yeah, that it's important to take breaks, yeah, and journalists must take breaks, otherwise you are gonna burn out. And
Margaret,
yeah, sorry,
saya bisa potong sebentar?
silakan Mas.
Oke. Ada satu lagi yang saya lupa, bahwa agar kita tidak terkena penyakit mental, kita harus memakai hati kita. Ketika kita meliput sesuatu dan kita tidak bisa melakukannya, terbukalah kepada manajer. Aku tidak bisa, ini terlalu keras buat aku. Itu untuk menghindari kalian masuk dalam mental health, ya, penyakit mental. Kita harus terbuka sama hati kita dan kita harus punya harus punya batasan di mana kita bisa masuk, dan ketika kita tidak bisa masuk jangan dipaksakan hati kita untuk memasuki itu.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mas Bea, yeah. Because I don't know whether journalists have this kind of burden that we have to be able to do like absolutely everything. We don't have to, yeah. And I learned it the hard way again, yeah. But yeah, go back to my previous highlight that Mas Bea and Amanta help remind us journalists that it's important to take breaks, and I think it's also important to remember it's not only a holiday of your physical appearance in the newsroom, but a holiday from thinking all of these things about your work, yeah, to give you a peace of mind. Because I've heard so many stories from my fellow journalists that they were on off days or on leave, but they could not stop thinking about works, especially when there were important events going on, yeah, maybe like elections or whatever, yeah. So it's not only like physical off days, but also what do you call that? Pikiran, ya, like you need to keep your mind away for a while from the work, yeah. I think we are about to run out of time. We still have 10 minutes or so. I don't think we have more questions. So I'd like to give these last minutes to our speakers to give their closing remarks briefly to conclude what we've discussed for the past 2 hours. I'm not sure who should start. Could I give the floor first to Mas Bea as a representative of us all journalists? Maaf, Mas Bea. Because
Okay,
you're like the senior that we need to look up to and learn from.
I'm just the old man. Oke, Mbak Margaret dan semuanya teman-teman yang hadir. Kerjaan sebagai wartawan memang penting, tapi badan kita dan mental kita juga penting. Yang harus dibagi benar-benar adalah perspektif. Oke, aku bekerja, perspektifku bekerja. Oke, sekarang aku istirahat, aku tidak memikirkan pekerjaan. Pikirkanlah ibumu, bapakmu, saudaramu, pacarmu, suamimu atau istrimu, dan juga anak-anakmu. Itu adalah part lain yang juga cukup penting. Bahwa kita bekerja dalam tekanan, iya, tetapi ketika berlibur, berliburlah. Istriku selalu mengingatkan, Pak, ini kita berlibur, nggak usah mikir kantor. Itu anak-anaknya butuh perhatian. Gitu. So, ada dunia lain selain pekerjaan yang juga menanti kita. Apakah itu pacar, apakah itu bapak ibu atau anak-anak atau istri. Mereka juga penting, bahkan mereka cukup penting sampai kita tua. Kalau pekerjaan hilang, kita masih bisa mencarinya. Tapi kalau anak hilang, kita tidak bisa mencarinya. Atau anak rusak, kita tidak bisa menggantinya. Ketika sebuah pekerjaan hilang, sebuah kantor punya sebuah sistem akan cepat mencari orang seperti kita. Tapi kalau kita kehilangan atau anak kita jadi rusak atau hubungan orang tua kita jadi rusak, kantor tidak bisa menggantinya. Kita yang harus memperbaikinya. Gitu. Itu aja dari saya. Terima kasih. And thank you for Nani Afrida who invite me dan teman-teman Aji. Saya terbuka karena saya menyadari banyak kesalahan dalam keluarga dan itu tidak harus diulangi oleh orang lain. Terlalu berat menebusnya. Bukan terlalu berat, tapi cukup berat menebusnya. Seorang anak, saya punya anak 3 yang paling bungsu, paling sensitif. Ketika dulu dia bilang, ketika mau tidur, Bapak, Ibu, aku mau tidur, I love you. Hanya istriku yang menjawab, I love you, dan aku cuma diem aja. Ketika istriku, kamu kok nggak balas? Ya kan udah kamu balas, udah cukup. Tapi itu nggak cukup ternyata buat dia. Hari-hari ini ketika bilang I love you, saya juga harus membalasnya dengan I love you. Memperbaiki anak bukan pekerjaan mudah, tapi itu akan lebih mudah kalau kita sadar sejak awal. Jadi kamu punya dunia lain, keluargamu, dan perhatikan mereka. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Mas Bia. That's deep, ya. It's a important reminder, ya, for us journalists who are still working on the ground, especially. I'd like to give the chance to probably Mas Zikri, ya, who is also still a journalist, to give his closing remarks before we move to Ananta.
I very much agree with what Mas Bea said. I think, and this is very important to me. Also, this issue is also very important to me because I recently became a father. My firstborn was born in April. So family time is very, very important to me these days. Like before when I was a single person, yes, I can dedicate my entire day to office. I will work 24/7 if I have to. Then I got married, so spend less time at work. But when I have my child, I think it's very important that I make as much time as I can for my child. So I think what advice I have for everyone is, like I said earlier, the first time is to manage expectations. It's to communicate to whether you're an employer or whether you're an editor or whether you're a journalist, is to communicate what is it that we expect from each other and in every situation. If you're a journalist and you need time to spend time with your family, to have more time to do your work, you need resources, you need help, it's important to communicate that. If you're an editor, it's important to communicate, yes, to accommodate your employees, but also to tell them, okay, yes, I can help you do XYZ, but we need, what is it that I expect from you in return? Reasonable expectations, right? So yeah, for me, that's the most important thing. It's to have better communication. Sorry, better communication between at all levels, so that we can all manage our expectations of each other. I think that will really help in dealing with the stress and challenges that we have in the industry.
Thank you, Mas Zik. Lastly, please, Manta, the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me and allowing me and giving me this forum to share like my thoughts and my impressions about this. And when I started talking about trauma and journalism, which was in 2011, people back home in Sri Lanka, my own colleagues, thought that I was cuckoo, that I had gone, there's something wrong in me. And I see these kind of meetings, these kind of gatherings as the progression we have made from that time to now. Now we are talking openly about trauma impact in Asian journalism situations, in Asian journalism cultures. That is a huge development for me. That is a huge improvement for me. And I think as long as we keep doing this, journalism is going to become safer and journalism is going to become a place that young people will engage. And I have, well, it's not a request, it's actually a plea to RG to take this work forward, to take the skills, to take the knowledge that is available and the experience that is available in this room to journalists who are entering the field, to journalists who don't speak English, who work in remote locations. I can't do that because I don't have the facilities. I don't have the networks. But RG has that. They can take all of this out there. So as long as we take it out there, I think we keep making the progress. I think we keep making journalism a safe environment and a safe profession. And finally, I know that we always talk about will journalism survive? In the next 2 years, next 5 years, journalism will survive. And journalism is important because authentic, valid information matters to the citizens of our parts of the world. When people go to vote, they need to find out what is true and what is false. And in this environment of fake news, of misinformation, of disinformation, and artificial information, journalism really matters. And all of us are duty bound to make journalism a safe place for people to come in and work. So again, this work is important. Keep doing this. And I will extend any support in any which way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanta. That's nicely stated remarks to conclude all the things that we've discussed, yeah, for 2 hours. And I'd like to again encourage anyone, especially reporters or journalists in Indonesia, to please don't hesitate to reach out to AJI Indonesia for any help and support. We are here, and we will do our best to give support. And thank you for all the calls from Mas Bea, Zikri, and Amanta to encourage AJI Indonesia to pick up and move on with what next after this discussion today. Thank you again, everyone who have participated, and thank you for the speakers. I hope we can continue these efforts to make this industry a more compassionate industry to everyone involved. Thank you. Good day.
Bye.
Oke, aku kembalikan ke panitia ya, Mbak Novi.
Halo, halo Kak. Di end streamer tapi. Bentar ya Kak, aku end streamer dulu. Oke, terima kasih banyak Kak Margaret, Kak Butet. Ini udah keluar semua ya.